Welcome to the Urgency of Awareness podcast. I'm Jody Farr.
And I'm your girl, Nita Renee.
Join us as we gain new awareness of our personal experience
and the experiences of others.
You know it. So that together we can build our capacity, bring it into the relationships we have,
work lives,
yes, and the community.
Let's go.
Welcome, audience. Today's question: how much time did you think about, put into, plan on getting where you had to get today? And if you're still on the couch in your pajamas, there's no judgment. How much time or energy did you put in getting to where you need to get yesterday? Come on in and join us.
Girl, now you know. It takes me as long as my procrastination lets me. You know what I'm saying? So I love being on time, yet I always forget that I'm going to talk to everybody in the hallway. I'm going to talk to everybody on the elevator. And then I got to put myself in the front seat and I got to put myself in the back seat just the way I like it. Then I got to hop in. I got to get my music ready.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is you don't really take much time to plan, think about, you just go.
Girl, so you got to break it down. Why would you even talk to me? What's the question? What's it for?
Well, on this episode, we want to go deeper into our understanding.
Well, give me some understanding,
because understanding leads to that awareness, and awareness can build that capacity. Remember we talked about the last episode? Yes. So if you go to page 34, 35, okay. I take 18 different identities that are normalized dominant, which remember gives us a different experience.
Yes.
So let's just pick one. I'm just going to pick one.
Okay, pick one.
One is able bodied. You and I are able bodied.
Okay, let's
go
there.
We're normalized dominant.
Let's go there.
We both said we would jump in the car. Right? We don't have to think about it. But if you're a person with a disability, there might have to be some serious planning. Now, you can be a person with a disability and still drive a car. You can still jump in the car. And you might not be able to jump in the car. So you have to arrange for a ride, which might be public transportation, or if you're out in a rural, you have to find a relative. So you're talking about calling 2-3 days ahead of time just to get where you want to go, because your experience of the societal system, you're not always thought of. Remember, us normalized dominant, we're geared towards, we're thought of.
That's crazy.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. When you bring it up, it makes me think of my cousin. He has a disability, and he's like one of the only few in our family. And talking to him just a couple weeks ago opened my eyes to like him saying literally, I don't really go to many more places anymore because it's so much that I got to think about.
So much. It takes so much energy, especially up here in the Midwest with the snow. I mean, and all of that. And so there's so much. So when you look at listeners, when you look at page 34, 35, and you look at the identities you don't hold, you want to start to actively go out and understand that experience more. And in today's world with so much social media, so much literature, it's pretty easy to go ahead and gain more awareness and understanding. So for myself, I had a friend and she had a disease that progressively took her movements away in her body. Yeah. And that's how I learned. I had no idea. It was just like right-handed. I had no idea how much was geared towards me until she had to use a wheelchair, and I was so proud of myself because I learned all these lessons from her experience. Right. And so I was like, girl, there's a new restaurant. I got reservations, and I knew her questions because I was ready for them. And so I was like, and I already called and they have a ramp.
That is so you.
I already called and they got a handicapped bathroom.
So you.
And so, and my friends, she's like, did you ask what pitch the ramp is at? And I'm like, no. And then she's like, did you ask how they put the bathroom door on in the handicap stall? And I'm like, nope. And and then she had to explain, she goes, Jody, I'm in a wheelchair now that is heavier, and you can't push it because it's heavier. And if the pitch is too steep, it won't make it up, and you're not going to be able to push me. And then she's like, and if it was winter, she's like, if they don't clear it, we're going to get stuck. And those listeners, if you're able-bodied like myself, you might not know this, but think of handicap stalls. If the handicap stall swings to the inside of the stall, then she can't get in to use it with her wheelchair. The stall will remain open. So handicap stalls are supposed to swing outside so that it comes out so people can get in and then shut it. But all these things I didn't know because I show up with the experience of my identity.
Girl, hanging out with you, my whole life is changing. Because I promise you, I didn't listen. I'm just trying to figure out who I'm talking to on the hallway and where my bag's going to go in the car.
And we don't even think that that's a benefit. You know what
all.
I mean? Just like being right-handed. I'm like, well, what benefit do I get being right-handed? And then you think about it, turns out, oh, everything's geared towards me. I don't have to think about anything. Same with Able Bodied, is I don't have to, the snow is an inconvenience for me, but it doesn't mean I can't get somewhere.
Right.
And so my question then, this affects how we show up. So if I don't have this awareness, then I show up not even thinking about that experience. And so if she comes in late, I might be giving her the stink eye, like, why are you late? Not understanding all that she may have gone through that day.
Wow.
So it leads to sometimes judgment, or what I say is this: we will take our blanket of life and we'll take it and we'll put it on top of someone and smother them out unintentionally. And what I mean by that, listeners, is I say all of us have a blanket of life
Girl,
on
you
us.
in this blanket of life like a James Brown.
I know. See, that's how experiences are different.
Me,
audience members right there. See, I said a blanket of life and she thought of James Brown, right? There's some audience members like, well, I did too. And then some of us are like, no. Some of us are thinking of our grandma, our blanket of life, a shawl.
You just threw me. You know what I'm saying?
So imagine having a blanket on your shoulders. That's I call it your blanket of life. And every thread that goes through that blanket is one of your identities. So one thread might be, are you able-bodied or are you a person with a disability? One thread might represent your age. One thread might represent if you're left or right-handed. But all those identities in our blanket of life, they give us experiences that affect how we show up. And that affects the questions that we ask. It affects the judgments that we sometimes make. And it can limit our capacity again. If we don't gain more awareness,
right. We don't expand. We'll end up contracting.
Exactly.
Wow. I would love to ask you a question about when you said the age piece, like something bubbled up for me. So can I go there?
Yeah, go.
Well, I mean, it makes me think of like the normalized dominant age triangle that you have in your book on page 7, right? Yeah.
And for the listeners, let me throw it in there.
Go for it.
It's 18 to, I think I put 65. Now, 18 is a solid number because in the United States, and I present in many countries, but specifically in the United States, if you're under 18, we don't even let your voice count at a policy level. Like the societal system really doesn't see you, right, or recognize you or let you have voice.
Right.
So at 18, you start to get voice. And of course, it increases. Then 21, you can drink, and 26, you can rent a car, and then at some point, you start to disappear. No, so I always say 65 is a fluid number. So the triangle, normalized dominant triangle, is 18 to 65. But I've had 55-year-old women in my audience go, Jody, try being 55 and a woman and unemployed. You're already invisible. Right? Yeah. Then I've had other people say, well, Jody, look at Mitch McConnell, look at Nancy Pelosi. They're both in their 80s and they still have tons of voice. So I don't know the exact number. There's not an exact number when you start to become invisible in the societal system. But sadly in America, as you age,
somewhere up there.
You do. So our normalized dominant is when the societal system sees you, gears towards you, and allows you to have voice. The triangle pointing down then is those under 18, and then those over at some point like 65. But you were thinking of that.
Yeah, it makes total sense because, we work with young ladies in middle school and high school.
Under 18.
Yes. And a lot of times what I'm experiencing is that we seek to create programming or create, let's say, conferences or, all types of experiences without ever asking them. Like our organization has listened to the girls in regards to, some of the things that they want to do in Project Diva. And so... But it's really interesting when I step into rooms that are youth serving rooms and they are like going ham on, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And
it's normalized dominant age people saying that.
And nobody, literally they haven't asked anybody under 18.
Right. And that's what happens when we don't have awareness is we think we have the capacity. We just, because I represent this group, I can speak for them. And there are times, but there are a lot of times, no, we shouldn't be speaking for someone else or without at least permission being given. And why don't we have that voice there? If we truly understood that, look, our young people are experiencing the societal system very differently than us, then we would want to hear their voice. Because I know you had talked about that one of the conferences, the professionals wanted to do something on finance. And of course, normal audience members answer this. What do you think adults, we're going to work with kids on finance. What should we do?
It always goes to budgeting and saving.
There you go, budgeting and saving.
And it's so funny that it's, and I had to I get so many people wanting to, I'm a financial advisor, or I work at this bank, and they want to come and talk to our girls, and it's like, pause, press pause, literally, because what we do know is that as adults, those couple of spaces have not given us the financial wealth that we want or the financial stability that we want. So listening to the girls, they've shared with us that they want to understand retirement better. They want to understand how to actually open up a business and sustain the business.
Yes.
And so we've made that kind of space in Project Diva International, where we have an academy strictly focused on personal finance, and another one strictly focused on investments.
Yep.
And our girls are soaring in that, and they're middle and high schoolers.
Exactly.
So again, like, it's really interesting that you say, just this conversation, because especially around that age piece, because that 0 to 18 and that 65 and up, I feel like that's I think you hit the numbers on that really well.
And a couple of things that I want to point out to listeners is you hit the pause button. That is a tool from the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
You hit the pause button, and then you showed up to listen to the experience of people under 18 and listen to incorporate that in how we do business. So one of the ways that sometimes helps me is when I change a triangle set, because there's sometimes I'm a normalized dominant person, and I think, well, I know about that other experience. I can just go ahead and act right away. But then if I change it to some place where I'm not normalized dominant, so audience members, if you're a female, what if men put on a conference for women, but it was only men on the planning board and only men did the thing. You'd be able to tell. Like I think we could go there, and there'd be small little things that let us know that they didn't show. Whoever was on the planning meeting didn't show up with that experience. They might have some insight, but they didn't show up because, they didn't change all the male bathrooms over to female. You know what I mean? They didn't do little small things that would let you know that you've experienced that. Just like as an able-bodied person, I tried little small things, when I did the reservation, but there was still, I don't have that lived experience.
Right.
So there were still things that I couldn't do. So the more that we get understanding, and put ourselves out there, the more we can build capacity to listen. But like you said, it also requires hitting that pause button. Now, one thing I want to point out to listeners is, because some of them, they're getting the book now, is on the triangle chart, page 34, 35, I worked with everybody who has that identity to say, hey, how do you want to be identified? Now, this alone, when it comes to able-bodied and a person with a disability, I work with people with disability, and that's a whole conversation in that identity, in that experience. Because some people said, Jody, I hate the word disability. Do not use it. Right. This is a person with a disability. Some people said, Jody, I hate different. It's like, oh, I'll use differently abled. And some people have said, no, I hate differently abled. And so the common denominator that came through was people said, Jody, make sure it's person first. I'm a person with a disability. Gotcha. Now, when I present, I say, I explain this, and I say, so if you're out in the audience right now and you're a person with a disability and you don't like that identity, you scratch it out and put differently abled or whatever works for you. If you're able-bodied, you leave it the way it was. Because it's not, again, we got to practice. It's not ours to change. Come on. So I always say on page 34, 35, I can tell you why I use the identities that I use, but I'll never say they're the right identity. Absolutely. So as we speak in these episodes, I want people to know that we're always flexible, and there was a lot of intentionality that went into why we picked the words we did, but it's never to say that's the right one, because that wouldn't be both and.
I agree. Well, I know it's been working for our organization and definitely building capacity within our team, especially our executive directors and our leaders. And so, Jody, let's go back to this, the question that you posed today about, like, how much time did it take for us to get to where we needed to go today or yesterday? It really makes me think a little bit more about, like, myself being fully able-bodied and able to walk to my car, or if I wasn't like of age, you know,
right, you wouldn't even have a driver's
to
license.
have a
And
or if I wasn't economically stable.
Yes, then
enough.
that's what I was just going to go. Sorry to interrupt you. That made me think is, so if you're under 18, a lot of people, our listeners might be like, well, I'll Uber there. But if you don't have those finances,
That part.
And so that's where I'm going to ask the listeners, start thinking about your blanket of life, though. How do those identities intersect? Because if I'm under 18 and I'm middle class or upper middle class, yeah, I can call an Uber. But if I'm under 18 and I don't have those finances, then that's not a possibility.
I promise you, because I was just about to say, like, if I was not economically stable and able to purchase my badass Jeep, shout out to all my Jeep fams out there.
Gosh, here she goes with the Jeep.
You know how Jamel be rocking and rolling.
Okay.
Who knows who I would have been cussing out on my way here.
Right.
I ain't even gonna lie, right? This conversation truly affects me. Like, even as I'm thinking here, I'm thinking of how I lovely am expanding, you know, and not contracting, because again, like when I had that conversation with my cousin a couple of weeks ago, like that really opened me up. So it's really funny and cool how we're having this conversation now, because it's a real thing.
It is absolutely.
I'm able to see him.
Yes, it's absolutely a real thing. And we start to realize just how much our societal system doesn't see or acknowledge identities that aren't normalized dominant. And what we can do is write them off. Because that made me think, one last story is, and I know a lot of listeners can relate, is as I aged, because, you know, I'm a Gen X and borderline baby boomer, and I'm from the country, so, you know.
Your threads is threading.
It's something. And so when younger generations started to hit the workforce, I truly did not understand them. Like, I was reacting left and right.
Yeah.
And I found myself judging, and I found myself like, my way is the right way, and these young people, they're just doing it the wrong way. And I was making my world smaller, because, you know, I was. And so I had to hit that pause button and start to go out and understand. And like, okay, how have these younger generations experienced the societal system? And how does that affect how they show up? And my one friend who teaches gave me this one. She said, Jody, remember, this younger generation, for many of them, their household geared around them with their activities and everything.
Goodness, yes.
And they were listened to. Because I don't know if you're my age or older, you know, we were to be seen, but we were not to be heard,
but
right?
We took time to listen to ours.
Yeah, but yes. And so when they come into the work world, how this affects how they show up then is, I had an employee from a younger generation. It was her second day of work, and I'm her boss's boss's boss. I'm 3 levels up, and she put a note on my door that said she needed to meet with me immediately. And it turned out that the only thing that was wrong was there was a broken file cabinet. So when I thought like the place was burning down or something was happening, but I couldn't even fathom. I did not have an experience that said I would put on my boss's door a note 2 days into my employment.
She need to hear me. I need to talk to her,
I would,
the decision maker.
Right. Yes, and that's that exactly. She wanted to talk to the decision maker and hear me, and that's how she showed up. So rather than react and take offense to it, because I was building my capacity. And so the one tool that I want to leave our audience members with is, and this is human nature, we all do it. When we see an experience that is outside of ours, it is human nature to react. You remember, go back to left-handed, right-handed. I said they put the doors on, you know, wrong. So not only will we react, but we will also judge it very quickly.
Real quick.
Yes. And so we're like, oh, they put it on wrong. You know, I did it that fast. Same with younger generations coming into the workplace. I'm like, who do these guys think they are? Like, I was reacting, but then it led right into judgment statements. Like, you know, oh my gosh, they're so entitled. It was all judgment. That does not allow us to build capacity. It doesn't keep our families together and communicating, and it makes work so much more stressful.
Oh my goodness.
And so hitting those pause buttons and realizing when I'm reacting or even judging, that's when I have to hit that pause button.
Yep, slow down.
And gain more understanding of another person's experience.
Wow.
Because it affects how we show up.
I love the tool. I love the tool. Press the pause button.
That pause.
Slow it down.
Yes. Gain that understanding.
Gain the understanding.
Yeah. And
be open to it.
And even when we're open to it, and then also know that once we gain the understanding, it's not ours to go and talk for. You know what I mean? So just because I have, you know what they say about a little knowledge is, you know, deadly, is to gain the understanding is so that I can show up and hold space to listen. Not to go ahead and to make a ton of movement. Yeah.
That's good.
And we'll talk about that too
You gonna talk about that
in the future? Not this episode.
Better talk to me then in the future. Jody, this was a dope conversation, and this is why I love doing this podcast. For me, it's real personal because I have a lot of little girls looking up at me, and so for them to be able to walk into adulthood ready, like healthy, mentally and emotionally
and financially,
right? This is big because in order for them to do it, they're going to need to build capacity because they're growing up in a whole different world than what we did. So,
and they're going to need to have adults around them that have capacity. And that's one of the things I love about your organization is so many adults there holding capacity.
Doing our work.
Yes.
Listen, we're doing our work.
And so audience, are we doing our work for our families? Are we showing up with capacity? Are we doing the work we want and showing up differently for them and for the work that we do?
Wow, well, that walks me right into my close, y'all. As we close, capacity builders, that's who y'all are now. This is what it looks like to build capacity. This is us. Building capacity within ourselves, our institutions, our communities. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be with us, and we so appreciate you, and we will see you next time.